Guys, what does Alexander Volkov and Cory Sandhagen have in common? They both starched living legends last night, and we're talking about it right now. What's up, Barnhill family? Welcome back to the channel.
Yo.
So, Nick, if you're a big fan of the living legends, Alistair, Overeem, and Frankie Edgar, last night was a bit tough to watch, kind of a tough pill to swallow. I personally love both of those guys, but I was really impressed by the performances of both Cory Sandhagen and Alexander Volkov.
Absolutely. So many fans, MMA fight fans, if you've been around the sport for a little while, even if you're new to the sport but you've kind of dove deeply into it, you know Frankie Edgar, you know Alistair Overeem, and you have a ton of respect for them. All the boys in the back, all the fighters that came up are literally look up to these two guys so much. And it is tough to watch people like Frankie Edgar take a tough, 30-second loss. And Overeem kind of just get beat at his own game. But that's this sport. It's a brutal one, and the new breed is kind of coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. This was definitely a demonstration of the new generation of bantamweight as well as heavyweight. Yeah. And, we said it going into this fight, even though we kind of were hoping. I was almost like my heart was saying Overeem, but my brain was saying Volkov.
Right.
I think what we're looking at is the new generation at heavyweight. You have Alexander Volkov, you have Curtis Blades. He's got a tall order. He's got to get past Derek Lewis, and Derek Lewis has shown that he can knock out anybody, including Alexander Volkov, at any time. So that's not a given. But I think what you're seeing here is the new generation coming up, and I'll say that as well at bantamweight. Cory Sandhagen is only 28 years old. Wow. Very young in his career. To have somebody like Frankie Edgar on his list of accomplishments is spectacular for him.
Yeah, you could see it in Volkov's emotions after the fight. There was a moment there where he was just holding Overeem's hand, and it's one of those things. They were kneeling next to each other, and it just made you feel like, man, this guy probably has looked up to Overeem for a long time.
Yeah,
you have to get the job done. You have to go handle your business, but at the same time, you wish it could be against anybody else but Overeem. And then same thing for Sandhagen when he knocked out Edgar. He said that's one of his one of his idols, and you have to get the job done, better him than me, but. It's always difficult when there's no real animosity between the opponents and there's a ton of respect, especially a younger fighter that's going up against somebody they looked up to for a long time. But it is one of the rare things in this sport that it's kind of unique to this sport where you don't see it in other sports, and it's something that young fighters get to do. And while it is kind of eerie and can be a little bit sad to take one of your idols out, it really is a true accomplishment for young fighters to go in there, see a living legend face to face against them, and then prove your skills and showcase the world just how good you are, and you study people like this and evolve.
What's the old saying? Work hard until your idols become your rivals. Cory Sandhagen and Alexander Volkov definitely embodied that last night.
Certainly.
Getting into the individual performances, I think we learned more, truthfully, about Volkov than we did about Sandhagen.
Yeah. Time had a lot to do with
just because, that. Listen, Frankie Edgar got caught. Anybody can get caught at any time. Alexander Volkov got caught by Derek Lewis after, dominating him for almost all the fight. So, Sandhagen showed us last night that he has an absolutely beautiful jump knee that on a wrestler timed at the perfect and appropriate time, landed and ended the night. And I think he absolutely put himself right back into title discussion and contention. Although we didn't really see how much his game's evolved, you can't fault him because he got the job done so quickly. Volkov, on the other hand, showed that he really is coming into his prime. His straight punches last night, he was landing them at will. He was patient. The times that he hurt Overeem, he followed up well. He didn't get reckless because that's where the danger can come in. Overeem can catch you if you get a little overextended, a little reckless. He picked his shots. It was beautiful. It was masterful. He was patient. And I think that he absolutely is putting himself right back into the title conversation. Here's the problem. Here's the setback for Volkov. He's lost 2 fights in his last 10, I think. I think he's like 10-2 in the last 10. If I'm wrong, it's 9-2 in the last 11.
Right.
But a very impressive record. But those 2 happen to be Curtis Blades and Derek Lewis, who are now fighting each other next week or the week after next. And that's kind of like who's the number one contender sort of fight. And then you have John Jones floating out there. So that's the downside for Volkov. The good side for Volkov is he's only 32 years old, which is a spring chicken for heavyweight.
Right.
He's going to be around for a very long time. I do think we had a funny comment on one of the last videos we did about Volkov that there would be a new president of the United States before Volkov got a title shot. Now, whether that's 4 years from now or 8 years from now, I don't think that will be the case. I think Volkov will still fight for a title. I'm going to say within 24 months, depending on what happens with Jones, whether Stipe retires. But one thing's for sure, Alexander Volkov cemented himself as a top contender last night.
Absolutely. And I'm siding with you. I think within the next 24 months, we'll get Volkov fighting for a title. And that's saying a lot because the division moves slow.
Yeah.
It's constantly moving at a slow pace. So I would like to see him in there. I think that he's a tough matchup for John Jones. I think he's a tough matchup for Ngannou. Obviously, he was a tough matchup for Derek Lewis. I mean, he was winning that fight until 14 seconds left in the fight, and Derek shut the lights out. But he's one of these guys that, for sure, if I had to bet on a contender, a top fiver of any division that's for sure going to be a champion, I think I'd have to go with Volkov. Of all the divisions, I think Volkov's the sure bet. He's 32, like you said. By the time he might be 35 when he becomes the champ, but I think it's going to be closer to 34, 33. I think he really does possess the skills to take the title, and winning. I don't think anybody's beaten Overeem quite as perfectly as he did. Ngannou did have that ridiculous knockout over him, but that fight was competitive until there was an
uppercut from hell that just took Overeem straight out.
Yeah, Volkov's performance was clinical. It was just sharp. Everything looked good. He beat Overeem, the best striker the heavyweight division's ever seen, at his own game, which is precision striking.
Yeah, Overeem is the most precise striker in UFC history.
Most decorated.
He's landed 74.8%, I believe, of his shots that he's thrown. He's super, super accurate. So when you take on Mr. Accuracy and you're more accurate than him, that's beating the best at his own game. And Volkov really showed that his game's evolving and his level is rising. But if you look at the heavyweight division, who's operating at the top? Stipe, 38 years old. Daniel Cormier, who had the great trilogy with Stipe in his 40s. Francis is 34th, almost 35 now, if I'm not mistaken. So, 32 is very young for Volkov. Is in a fantastic position.
Today's Derek Lewis's birthday.
That's right. Yeah, happy birthday to the Black Beast. Yes.
So he's 36 now. So like you said, they're all kind of 35 plus.
Yeah. When you have these guys like Curtis and Volkov, the future is very, very bright for them. Now, looking at the flip side of this, we have to talk about Alistair Overeem.
Yeah.
He was winning that fight for no time.
Right.
He was losing every second of that fight, every exchange. He seemed like he was mentally checked out after the first few exchanges didn't go his way. He threw a couple of overhands which weren't as crisp and precise as we've seen in the past from Reem. He says he's not done. He says he wants to fight out his contract and do a few more. At 40 years old, do you think it's time we start calling for Overeem's retirement, or do you think the Reem, the Demolition Man's got a few more fights left in him?
I think there's still room for Overeem in the division and in the industry, and at least has enough time to fight out his career or fight out his contract.
He did win his last two before last night's knockouts.
Yeah, and that Volkov last night was the best looking heavyweight we've seen, maybe in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
That was the sharpest performance of a heavyweight that we've seen. Stipe looked really good against DC in the last fight and even in the second fight, but that was a perfect Volkov. And he came in second, but Overeem is for sure one of the guys that can continue plus at 40 plus. I think Overeem, he's not going to get a title shot, but he still can bring a lot of eyes and bring a lot of attention to a card when he's on it, and he's still very game. I do know that he has a lot of knockouts against him.
Yeah.
He's been finished a bunch of times.
He's been knocked out 15 times.
Yeah, so maybe it's not the best idea, but he doesn't take a ton of damage leading up to those knockouts. Usually when he gets knocked out, it's like a one-punch starching.
Yep.
And, last night was kind of the first time we've seen him just get bullied and beat up. And
right.
then, an accumulative amount of punching and striking take him out. Usually he's really competitive, maybe even winning the fight, and then he gets caught, because a big heavyweight catches him. But I think there's room. He must have, probably 2 or 3 more fights left on the contract, and I think he could probably fight that out. I think they should be strategic with who his opponents are. Yeah.
The title run is done. It's officially done. We'll never see Alistair Overeem as a UFC champion, which I'm kind of disappointed about, but I'm also excited for the future of the division. But now that the title, so it's kind of almost like, and I think Frankie Edgar is a bit in the same position. You can take a back step and say we're not going for a title anymore, but there's still some fun matchups to be made.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at Frankie, if you're Frankie's camp and you're Reem's camp, I'm more encouraged going forward if I'm Frankie's camp than Reem's camp, because Frankie got caught. Yeah. And the reality is anybody can get caught on any given day. That flying knee, if it lands flush, puts Aljo out, it puts Peter Yan out, it puts anybody in the 135 division out. That was just a beautifully timed knee. Mm-hmm. And we've seen this now. This is the second fastest flying knee in UFC history, only to Jorge Masvidal. And it's always set up by a wrestler's shot. So it seems like this flying knee is here to stay. It's being implemented. People are figuring out how to time it, and they're figuring out how to do it on people that have great grappling skills, like Ben Askren, like Frankie Edgar. But for Edgar, he can go back and say, look, I got caught, I got hit, I got hurt, and just I got put to sleep. But if you look at how he fought against Pedro Munoz, he had an excellent fight. He looked like a crisp boxer. His cardio was great at 135. He was sharp from beginning to end. So I'm not super discouraged if I'm Frankie's camp. If I'm Reem's camp, it's like, okay, we realize now that there's a level at the top and we're not quite at that level. Right. But for Frankie, and I love this about the 135 division right now, and it's kind of come on all at once, and we've talked about it before. There's almost like a Legends League within the division.
Right.
So you have TJ Dillashaw coming back. You have Dominic Cruz coming back. Jose Aldo is there now, and now Frankie Edgar.
Uriah Faber.
Yeah, we can pull Frankie back from that. Yeah, even if Faber comes, we can pull Frankie back from, okay, he's going to be contending for a title at 135, and say what fun matchups are out there for him, and let the Aljos and let the Peter Yans and let the Sandhagens and maybe Dillashaw, if he can come back and catch a win, get back up there. So I think there's a lot of fun matchups for Frankie still at 135, and I've seen a lot on social media this morning of people calling for his retirement. I'm not going to be so quick to say that. I mean, anybody can get caught with a good shot, and he looked spectacular in his last fight.
Yeah, he also looked great last night. The pace he was bringing was, he looked
28 seconds. He looked good.
Yeah. I mean, he was moving like a fast bantamweight. He didn't look like a 40-year-old man. He looked like a young, hungry guy going out there to try to catch somebody. But unfortunately, Sandhagen was timing him perfectly, and he was keeping himself safe. It looked like he really knew how to use his range, which is tough, and especially when you have somebody like Frankie Edgar who's so good with the boxing and getting inside to box. You have to be very calculated when you're trying to stay long and use your range. Sandhagen looked like he was timing it perfectly, and then sure enough, 30 seconds into the fight, he gets the knockout. I definitely would love to see Frankie Edgar fight some of those other legends at the 135 division. Last night he was number 4, and he lost to number 2, so it doesn't set him back tremendously, but it is a bad blemish on his record. And there are so many fun fights that will bring a lot of attention to the bantamweights, like you said, the Jose Aldos. I'd love to see Frankie and Uriah Faber, or Frankie and Dominic Cruz, any of those guys. TJ Dillashaw, to me, while he is a living legend and while he is a little bit older and can belong in that category, also belongs at the top of the heap. And I think we'll see him kind of maybe take one or two of these
straddle
fights.
the fence.
Yeah. He'll take one fight probably against one of these legends, and then he'll move right back into the Peter Yans and stuff like that. But I think there's a lot of cool things for Frankie Edgar to do at 135. He looked like $1 million. I mean, his body looked really good. He looked like he took good care of himself during the training camp, and he looked fresh. And everybody gets caught at some point in this game, and he just got caught by absolute monster that deserves a title shot next.
Yeah, and speaking of TJ, Sandhagen was asked about him in the post-fight press conference and said, do you think that what you did now to Frankie last night sets you up for the winner of Aljo and Jan? And he said, absolutely. I'm 9-1 in my last 10. He's beaten Rafael Assunção. He's now finished Marlon Moraes, finished Frankie Edgar. And he said, look, TJ was on the sidelines for 2 years for a major PED violation. He does not deserve to come back and get an immediate title shot. He should come back, do one fight. I should get the winner of Aljo and Jan. And then depending on what happens with TJ, maybe he fights the winner of that fight, meaning him versus whoever wins Aljo. And I really, it's kind of hard to disagree with that. I mean, TJ, I personally think TJ is the best 135er of all time. I know people can disagree with that and say Dominic Cruz. It's TJ for me.
Yeah.
And so I think that, if he does come back, he should have one fight against somebody in the top
Uriah
5,
Faber.
top 10, maybe Uriah, yeah. And then let Sandhagen sort out his business with the winner of Aljo Jan, and then see where TJ lands from there. What do you think about that?
I think that's the way to go. I think TJ, everybody knows TJ belongs in a title fight at 135. You can't have the most dangerous bantamweight of all time just lurking around the top 5, top 10. He will really hurt people around that division. I think that what we need to do is we need to see him fight one time. It makes the most sense to put him in there with Uriah Faber for the storyline to, get TJ back in the casual's mind and back in their face. And nothing will do that like a fight with Uriah Faber. Uriah Faber, the story, the bad blood, all of that stuff. We need to see a closing of that chapter, a closing of that book, really. Yeah. And I think TJ and Uriah have wanted to settle the beef for a long time, but they knew there was only one way to do it. And the one way to do it is, luckily, the sport that they're in, which is fighting. They need to fight each other. We need to get that over with. And I think there's going to be a much-needed, highly anticipated hug at the end of it. Yeah. Let's just bury the hatchet type of thing. They seem like the two guys that are willing to do that. And when you watch them on The Ultimate Fighter, when Conor was kind of prodding and poking at them, they were arguing, but you could just tell that they seemed like brothers that just went awry, like
having a disagreement,
right? Yeah. They need to fix this. I think the storyline goes away the further TJ gets close, or the closer TJ gets to the belt. Yeah. So let's let it happen right now. The storyline will be huge. The card will be huge. It's something Uriah Faber deserves. Yeah. One of the biggest fights. And look, if Uriah Faber can beat TJ, then he sets himself up for a final title shot, which I don't see him winning. But it's something Uriah Faber deserves. TJ deserves it. And I think the three guys at the top, like you said, Aljo, Peter Yan, and Sandhagen, also deserve to figure out who the best is amongst them and then fight the former champ in TJ.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think, a lot of people have said that Uriah is, against TJ is cruel and unusual punishment and he's got no chance. And obviously, I think TJ Dillashaw would win that fight, and I think he'd probably win it by stoppage. Yeah. However, Uriah Faber is still a great fighter. He was in there with Peter Yan. I know he got clipped in the second round, but he looked great in the first round, and he lost to the champ. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like at 40 years old, and what we're seeing in the sport of mixed martial arts is always a constant evolution. We're seeing people learning proper training habits. They're not sparring hard every day. They're picking the days that they spar hard. They're using heart rate monitors to determine recovery levels. They're going and getting stem cell treatments in different countries in South America, like Colombia. They're doing altitude training. They're doing breath work. So there's a major difference between a 40-year-old fighter in 2021 and a 40-year-old fighter 10 years ago in 2011. For sure. And I think you're going to see the window of prime extended a bit. I think you're going to see people, you're already seeing it. I mean, look at Stipe's in his late 30s. Jan Blachowicz is in his late 30s. And I know those are the heavier weight classes, and it tends to get younger as you go down. But there's only one champion in his 20s right now, and that's Peter Yan. Yeah. Every other one is in their 30s. So that was not the case years ago. So I think that you're going to see people, TJ Dillashaw, Dominic Cruz, Uriah Faber, Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar, still able to compete at a very high level, whereas in years before that wasn't the case.
Yeah, fighters will continue to extend their careers as long as they're hungry and willing to adapt and evolve and take the right steps to make their career last as long as possible. It will work for them. People just back in the day, and even still some people today, they treat it like a car that's on revving on red.
Yep.
100%. And look, your body is pretty damn tough. Your brain is pretty relentless sometimes. But when you do that, when you sprint in your career, it's shorter. It usually might last you about 5 years, and then you're toast.
Yep.
But if you can sprint and know when to taper back a little bit, and sprint and know when to taper back a little bit, you can extend it into the 10, 12, even 15-year career. And I think you're right. The prime for the average-sized human, average-sized martial arts athlete is probably 30 to about 34 right now. And I think we're going to see it extend from 30 to about 36, 37 over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think there's enough examples right now that are proving that. And even though Frankie lost last night, I think that competition against Pedro was a great demonstration of that.
And you talk to people like Frankie Edgar and certain guys like that, and I haven't personally spoken to Frankie Edgar about this, but a lot of them will say, I'm 40 right now. I feel better than I felt at 30.
Yeah,
and they're entitled to say that, and if they truly feel that, like for me, I'm 27 years old. I feel better right now than I felt at 23, 22. And I feel that age still. I feel like I haven't aged 5 years since I was 22 years old. So I think as long as you take care of yourself, you eat the right things, you train correctly, you still train hard. You have to train hard like a dog in this sport, but you still train right and you train hard. Your body will take care of itself for you.
I agree.
As long as no major injuries come up.
Yeah, that's always the thing.
Yeah.
Well, guys, what do you think about the performance of Volkov and Sandhagen last night? We thought it was spectacular. Which one of these two guys do you think will be mixing it up for a title next? Let us know in the comments. And as always, we really appreciate you watching the videos. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and check us out on audio where you listen to podcasts. Until the next one, have a great day.
Peace.